My name is Claire Merritt, and for 7 years I sat across the dinner table from a woman who looked at me like I was a mistake her son had made. I never argued. I never raised my voice. I never once told her she was wrong. I just smiled, cleared the plates, and went back to work. She had no idea what I was building in the silence she gave me. Let me start at the beginning. I met Daniel at a friend's birthday dinner. He was quiet, thoughtful, the kind of man who listens more than he speaks. We talked for 3 hours that night without noticing the time. 6 months later, we were inseparable. A year after that, he asked me to marry him in the kitchen of our small apartment. No grand gesture, just him and me, and a ring he had saved for quietly. I said yes before he finished the sentence. His mother, Margaret, was at our engagement dinner 2 weeks later. She arrived in a cream blazer, pearls at her throat, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was not rude, not openly. She was something more precise than rude. She was the kind of woman who asks questions that are actually statements. Who says "how lovely" in a tone that means anything but? That evening she asked me what I did for work. I told her I was a junior analyst at a mid-sized financial firm. She nodded slowly. Daniel always needed someone grounded, she said. Someone practical. It sounded like a compliment. It was not. The comments came regularly after that. At Christmas dinner, when I mentioned a project I was leading at work, she turned to Daniel and said, "She works so hard, doesn't she? It's sweet." At his cousin's wedding, when someone asked what I did, she answered before I could. "She's in finance, back office mostly." I was not in the back office. I had never been in the back office, but I smiled and reached for my glass. The clearest moment came the evening Daniel and I told her we were buying our first home. It was a modest place, a fixer-upper in a good neighbourhood, bought entirely on what I had saved over 4 years of careful, disciplined work. Margaret looked at the listing photos, set them down on the table, and said without looking at me, "I hope you know what you're doing, Daniel." Some decisions are harder to undo than others. Daniel started to respond. I put my hand on his arm gently. "We're very excited," I said. "Would you like more tea?" She accepted the tea. The subject changed, and I drove home that night completely certain of 2 things. She would never change, and I would never stop. What Margaret did not know, what nobody outside of my small trusted circle knew, was what I was doing between the dinners and the holidays and the quiet smiles. I had always been good with numbers in a way that felt almost instinctive, not flashy, patient. The kind of good that compounds quietly over time. At work, I was methodical, thorough, the person who stayed an extra hour not because anyone asked, but because the detail mattered to me. I moved from junior analyst to senior analyst to a role managing a small team. Each step quiet, each step deliberate. On the side, I had been building something else entirely. It started as a spreadsheet, then a framework. Then a tool I built with a former colleague named Diane, who had the same instinct for systems that I did. We were solving a problem we both lived with every day at work, the way financial reporting across departments never quite spoke the same language. We worked on it for 18 months before we showed it to anyone. Then we showed it to 3 companies. All 3 wanted it. We priced it carefully, grew it slowly, and reinvested everything back into the product. Daniel knew. He believed in it before I did. On the evenings, he would bring me tea while I worked and say nothing, just sit nearby. He was that kind of man. Margaret did not know, and I did not tell her. Not because I was hiding, because I had learned something important by then. Some things grow better in the quiet. 7 years after that engagement dinner, Margaret called an early Sunday lunch. She did this sometimes, a formal gathering framed as casual, fine china out, her housekeeper serving, her rules quietly governing every corner of the room. Daniel's brother and his wife were there, his aunt, 2 family friends Margaret had known for decades. We were midway through the main course when Margaret turned to me with that particular expression I had learned to recognize. The one that meant a question was coming that was not really a question. "Claire," she said, "I read something interesting this week. A financial technology company. 2 women who founded it. Apparently quite successful." The table went quiet in the way tables go quiet when everyone senses something is happening. "I thought of you," she continued, "because the name seemed familiar. Merit Analytics. That's your name now, isn't it? It was not a question. It is, I said. She set down her fork. Is that your company? Diane and I founded it, yes. She was quiet for a moment. And the article said you manage accounts for some of the largest financial institutions in the country. We do. Another silence. Daniel's aunt leaned forward. Claire, why have you never mentioned this? I thought about 7 years of dinners. 7 years of suite and back office, and some decisions are harder to undo. Nobody asked, I said simply. The lunch ended politely, correctly. Margaret thanked everyone for coming, hugged Daniel at the door, nodded to me in a way that was different from before. Not warm exactly, but different. In the car, Daniel took my hand and said nothing for a while. Then he said, You knew she'd find out eventually. Yes, I said. You could have told her years ago. I know. He was quiet again. Why didn't you? I watched the road ahead of us. The afternoon light was low and golden and very still. Because I didn't build it to show her, I said. I built it because I needed to. And the moment I started explaining myself to her, it would have become about her. And it was never about her. Daniel squeezed my hand once and didn't say anything else. He understood. He always had. Margaret called me 3 days later. It was the first time she had ever called me directly. Always before it had been Daniel she called. Daniel she texted. Daniel she made plans through. She spoke carefully. Told me she had read more about the company. That she had not realized the scope of what I had built. That she wanted me to know she had always respected my dedication. I listened. I thanked her. And then I said something I had been holding for 7 years, not bitterly, just honestly. Margaret, I never needed your approval to keep going. But I want you to know I would have welcomed your support. She was quiet for a long moment. I know, she said finally. I know that now. Things did not transform overnight. Margaret is who she is. She was raised in a particular world with particular measurements of worth, and those things do not dissolve in a single phone call. But something shifted. A small recalibration. She began asking me questions at dinners now. Real ones. About the business, about the industry, about what we were building next. Sometimes she still says things that make me press my lips together quietly. But less.